Welcome to the third introductory tutorial for Excel spreadsheet. My name is Professor Michael D. Robertus, Department of Physics and Astronomy, York University. Now in this tutorial we're going to look at calculating two functions from independent array and trig functions in particular, and then we're going to visualize them, that is plot or illustrate with charts, and how one might in fact make the chart a little bit more attractive, perhaps not publication quality but a lot better than the default versions. Okay, as usual I'd like to start with, in a character string, just typing out what it is that I'd like to illustrate. So y1, the first function, is equal to, how about just sine x? And how about y2 is equal to sine a1x plus a2. And I want x to go from, let's say, 0 to, let's say, 600 degrees in increments of 5 degrees. Now, I have to specify a1 and a2, of course, but it's also important to note that Excel requires, in any kind of trig function, the argument has to be in radians rather than degrees. So we need not only to include a1 and a2, but in fact the degrees to radians conversion factor. So let's write that out. We know it's coming. How about we say a1 here, and that will be about 0.5. A2, and this is in degrees, how about minus 45 degrees, let's say. And then degrees to radian conversion, well, as we all know, that's pi divided by 180. In Excel, pi can be referenced by simply pi with no arguments. So that's pi and divided by 180, and there's the degrees to radians constant. Okay, I'd actually like to maybe put another blank line up above here. The HUT's done by clicking on the row, or right-clicking and clicking on Insert, and a line appears above it. And I could type in here a particular title. I could merge some of the cells and make it look a lot nicer, and just for your information. Okay, so in this particular column will be the x, or the independent values. y1 will be in here, and y2 will be here. So again, I'd like to be from 0 to 600 degrees in increments of 5 degrees. How can you do that best? Well, as you know from a previous tutorial, you enter 0, your starting element here, click on Fill and Series here. Again, I want it in columns. I'd like the step size to be every 5 degrees, and the stop value to be, let's say, 600. And press OK. And let's go all the way to the bottom, and we see that it's done just what I hoped it would do. Now, the y1 values. So the y1 is equal to, again, equals, we're doing a calculation, sine. Now it expects a radian argument. So it, of course, the x value is a6. But it has to be multiplied by the degrees to radian, which is in H7, and that has to be an absolute reference. So $H$7, right parentheses 0. Click on that if I wanted the equation to in fact be copied in every other cell all the way down. Double click on that lower right button there, and that has been taken care of. Now for y2, equals sine. Now a1 is $H $5 times, of course, the x value, which is just a6, but it has to be multiplied by the factor $H $7. Now I have to add a2, which is $H $6, and that has to be multiplied by the degrees to radians factor again, $H $7. Now I want that copied all the way down. Double click on that, and there are in fact the y values for the equation y2 we specified above. in text format. Now, a little digression. What happens if I want to, in fact, copy the Y2 values to another column, for example? So I want to copy it, let's say, from C6 all the way down to E6 all the way down. How might I do that? Well, let's try naively to do it like we did in an earlier tutorial. Control C copies the values. You click on where you want the first element to go, and Control V, or you can use your right click and copy and paste all the way down to the bottom. And we see here, however, a big problem. And not one of the E elements is the same as its corresponding C element. What's gone wrong here? Well, those of you who are sharp will notice that the X value it's taking is from column C, not column A, which is the X value that's we wanted to take it from. So what's happened here clearly is while the absolute referencing has worked, the relative referencing has not. So how might one get around this, particularly if you want to print out certain things or submit something to an instructor? The best way to do this, of course, is use another option in the paste option. So let's get rid of these values here. Control Z, and now instead of just Control V paste, which is just the default way, right click and choose the second option, paste by values. Okay, now notice the values are identical. Notice two things: the corresponding elements are the same now, but there is no equation associated with each of the different elements. It's just pasted as if it were a single number. So this can be helpful, but again, just be aware of the different paste options. So let me get rid of, oops, too much. Let me redo. Now I'd like to illustrate something very powerful about a spreadsheet. First of all, we want to visualize the data. I find it easiest if I go to the bottom and highlight the data beginning at the bottom and working my way to the top, left click, drag all the way to the top, because I want my chart near the top. So we go Insert and Recommended Chart, and the second one is Most Natural, and OK. Drag it again to a slightly more convenient spot, enlarge it a little bit by dragging the anchor. Now, a number of things that we could improve with this particular plot, but let me just show you one very important advantage of a spreadsheet. We can take any of these parameters, for example, and change them, and in real time we can see the changes not only in the Y2 axis, for example, but also the illustration or the visualization right away. So instead of minus 45 degree phase, how about 30? Hit return. Now watch the Y2 and watch the chart change appropriately. So very helpful. Okay, well, we can do the usual changes of the axes we can add by clicking on this. We can add axes titles, for example, amplitude here, and the axis title might be degrees. The chart title might be two sine functions. Now, what we'd like to do is to change the names of these two functions. Instead of series 1 and series 2, well, we can right click on that label, and it turns out select data is a very simple way of doing this. If you edit, you see that you can change the actual series name instead of the default. So series 1 was just maybe sine x, and series 2 might be sine ax plus b. And so we have those two renamed. The other thing that is helpful to do is to format the legend, and this allows you to relocate that legend to the top. Is actually pretty useful at this point. Okay, let's see our chart at the moment, and there's our legend. I do not like the x-axis labels here. Again, remember you can left click on this and format the axis. And if you proceed all the way down to, I believe it was labels, you can specify the label position to, let's say, low. You can also specify the interval unit, so maybe, every 10 type of thing, points, that kind of thing. We would like to have some grid lines. So add major grid line, and this is a little bit better here. We can, of course, increase font size. We can change a variety of things. I really strongly suggest you play with these things. But this has gotten our visualization a lot better, and it's shown how you can take simple models if you parameterize it and watch in real time as these things change. So in the next tutorial, what we're going to look at is actually importing data and a little bit more in that vein.